Hi, and welcome back to ALLTalkTV. My name is Avram Rosenzweig, and I'm the president of ALLTalk. We're very excited to have with us today Adam Hummel, and Adam is one of our honorees at our upcoming gala, which is called our Starry Nights Gala. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, to start things off, I have to tell you that I'm inordinately jealous of you, and I am because you wrote this book.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're what, 26 years old?
27, yeah.
27. I'm 52, so you're half my age. And one of my aspirations in life was indeed to write a book, and I've never been able to accomplish it.
Right.
So how was it writing a book?
It was interesting. It was interesting with the timing because I decided to write it while I was in the middle of law school.
Yes.
But it was good. It was something that I wanted to do, and like I said, I just wanted to. As soon as I had enough knowledge about something that I felt like I could write a book about it, I just went for it.
Well, I'm very proud of you, and I think that's one of my problems. This show is more about me than anything else, obviously. Of course. Thank you. You know, I often think that I don't have enough to write about. I know I've done my research. I know probably a decent, healthy book is about 70,000 words. Is that pretty much?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that, right? Yeah. And I never felt I had 70,000 words worth of anything, but you clearly do.
Yeah.
So let's figure out what that is.
Yeah. Okay.
And if this book is important at all. ALLTalk has been in existence since 1996. And over the decade, we've had an annual gala, and we call it Starry Nights. We changed the spelling. It used to be K-N-I-G-H-T-S. Now it's N-I-G-H-T-S. And part of Starry Nights is an entertainment component. We've had speakers in the past like Bob Geldof and Mia Farrow. But I think even more important than that, in my mind anyways, is on that night we present Tikkun Olam Awards. And of course, Tikkun Olam Awards are awards given to individuals who have done mighty things in the area of medicine, in the area of remembrance, having to do with Holocaust education. And there's also a youth award. Now you would be that youth, or affectionately called the Ute, right? Yeah. And it's given to somebody who has accomplished something which is important in the world. Again, that's repairing the world in their own way. We went through a whole nominations process, and there was your name. And it was decided by the powers that be that you would be the guy. So firstly, congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm really honored to be honored like this.
Yeah, so November 4th, you'll be receiving this award in front of 700 people. What's it like to get that call to be honored? What is that like?
It's very humbling. I wasn't expecting it, nor it did kind of come out of the blue, and I didn't know much about. I had always had Ve'ahavta on the list of people to contact to help with the project. But it was very nice. I didn't realize, sometimes I don't realize how many people have heard about the project or know about it, and so it is. It's very, humbling experience. But at the same time, I feel very privileged. Also, when I see the list of the other people who are going to be honored, I sort of feel like I don't deserve to be there with them, with Holocaust survivors and people like that who have given so much. But it's very touching.
I think that's very authentic. Yeah, I mean, I really do, because you're right. We will have Holocaust survivors on there who've done a lot in the area of education. Obviously post-Holocaust, Dr. Phil Berger, who's very well known for his work in HIV/AIDS activism, and now fighting certain bills that our government has enacted having to do with refugees. These are auspicious. It's an auspicious time with some very important people. But clearly some people thought you were important enough to be there, right?
And young enough to get the youth award.
Yeah, exactly, and young enough, exactly, right. So let's for a moment give our audience a sense of what it is that you do. You've graduated law school. You're articling now, and as you said before, during law school, you wrote this book, and it's pronounced.
It's Amani Hakiyatu. Peace is our right.
Right, and it has to do with a program that you've started up in Kenya to help the people of Kenya come to a better place of peace. Would that be a good description?
Yeah, I think it is. What we're trying to do is spread the culture of peace in a small part of Kenya.
Right.
It was a project that we started a few years ago. I went over to Kenya on my first trip. I thought I was actually going to be part of a bigger group of youths from the States. We went there just after, I'll say we for now, but I arrived there in August 2008, which was about 5 months after a big civil conflict had just ended in Kenya, which was a result of post-election violence and electoral meddling. And so when I arrived there, we were told that the purpose of our trip was just going to be helping some of the tribes sort out their cattle raiding issues, where they're stealing cows from each other, and helping them set up income-generating projects. And when I got there, I had two surprises. One was that There weren't any other volunteers, that it was just me that had been sent to Kenya by myself.
Welcome to Kenya.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I arrived in Nairobi alone. And the other was that once the people who had organized it on the ground there had taken me out to the village, I realized that there wasn't actually so much done in terms of organizing this along the lines of cattle raiding and income generating projects, but that they were waiting for me to see what I wanted to do. And it was my first time in rural Africa, and I looked at them and I said, you know, I don't
You were
really
22
know how
or 23 years old.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I was 23, and I had no idea what to do or how I could possibly help them, give them input into what I could do there. And so what I did do, however, was because this experience of the Civil War was so fresh,
Right.
and I was by myself and in an area where there's not a lot of white people, so I got a lot of attention. I was able to meet a lot of really interesting people who had a lot that they wanted to say, because the area that I was in the western part of Kenya, was so heavily affected by the Civil War that that I became a sounding board for a lot of people.
Okay, we're going to hold that thought for a moment. Sure. We're talking to Adam Hummel, and he has written a book called Amani Haki Yetu. Is that pretty close?
Yeah, that's good.
Now, I love the fact that you wrote this book. I love the fact that it's self-published, and you published how many copies of it?
Well, we got printed right away, about 300 copies, but they're available on Amazon.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
And they go for $25, right?
Yeah, $25.
And the money will be used towards this project.
All the money goes to the charity, yeah.
Okay, that's fantastic. So we're going to go to a break. When we come back, I want to dig a little bit into your past, you know, find out some of the dirt, you know. Just kidding. And because I think that anybody who ensconces themselves in Tikkun Olam in the way that you have, there's got to be something there that you were brought up on, and I want to know what your mom put in the food.
Okay.
All right, so stay with us. You're watching via ALLTalkTV, and we are taking you into the world of empathy with Adam Hummel. Welcome back to Via ALLTalkTV. On November the 4th, we'll have Via ALLTalk will hold its annual gala. It's going to be pretty special. This year, we're having as entertainment Stephen Page from the Bare Naked Ladies. Remember them?
Yeah, of course. They were my first concert.
Oh, really? Your very first one? Yeah. Mine was Alice Cooper. I almost got trampled. And it's going to be very, very exciting. The monies that are raised through Starry Nights are used to finance our homeless initiatives. We have to, essentially we go out 5 nights a week on a van, and we take volunteers into the streets to help the homeless. And it's a very, very challenging thing, because so many people who go in our van, really all they might do is step over the homeless during the course of the day, or step around them. And our task is to sort of open their eyes and to raise their consciousness about those people who live in our city, in Toronto, whom we consider to be homeless, and very often, or more often than not, most tragic lives, you know. So you bring the Jewish community together with that community, and something very magical comes out of it. Now, you were brought up in South Africa.
I wasn't brought up in South Africa.
I was born in South Africa.
I was born in South Africa.
So I don't have to tell you about strife. One of the reasons you left was for your family security, right?
Yeah.
What do you have any memories of South Africa yourself?
I don't have memories from when I was born and lived there, but from visits and going back, sure. I've been back a few times in the last few years. And
how was it?
It's an interesting place, South Africa. Johannesburg.
Yeah.
My family's from Johannesburg, and Johannesburg is one of the most dangerous cities in the world, and it's interesting living there. My grandmother lives there, and she's almost 90, and we're always baffled by how she actually still stays there.
Is she in a gated seniors home, or
She's in a gated apartment building, yeah. And but everyone else is, they live in gated communities, and everyone's got a 10-foot wall around their house with glass shards and electric fences, and so it's interesting. But we also, when I went back a couple of years ago, we went to visit Soweto, which is the biggest township in South Africa, and it was interesting to see. It was before I started this initiative, and it was interesting to see how people live in South Africa. How do they live? Still, they live on very little. Some people live on less than $1 a week, and they live in it's these little huts with tin roofs and mud walls, and they have one water pump for a whole block of people living there, and they live on very little, and it's very interesting seeing how they live, especially when you come from, let's say, the white side of South Africa, which is much more affluent. Especially the Jewish people in Johannesburg are more affluent and have a lot more. and also going back now when it's supposed to be, the time of empowerment for everyone in South Africa.
So how do you digest this? I mean, you went to law school. It sounds like you have a pretty good life here, right? One has to have time to be able to write a book, right? And then you go there and you see shanty towns for all intents and purposes. How do you digest this inside, the disparity between what you have and what other people don't have? And when I say don't have, I know there are things within these populations, things that these people do have that we don't have. So I don't mean to put words into your mouth, but what happens inside of you when you see this poverty?
Okay, well, it's interesting because I've thought about this a lot, and instantly you do feel, of course, very lucky, and you're very happy that you have what you have, and that you were able to, especially in terms of security, leave when we had the chance to and come here. But when I saw that, and when I learn about other things that are going on in Africa, like when I went to York University and I was living overseas afterwards for a while, I was very involved in the Darfur movement, and you come to realize all that is Africa, the different parts of Africa that you don't always see as a white South African. You know about the good parts. And I started to feel like we actually had I don't know if this is answering your question, but I started to feel like we had that white South Africans who left had a special sort of responsibility towards parts of Africa. And I wrote an article which wasn't very well received, but which I thought was important to say is that we did have that responsibility, and I thought we had I think that everyone has a responsibility towards people in Africa, but especially white Jewish South Africans who like to pride themselves on the help that we can give others and that we do offer others.
Who wasn't it well received by?
It wasn't received well by some people in the Jewish community, in the South African community.
What did they say?
They just said like that they left and it was for their own security, and that that they do give back enough. But I go back to South Africa and I see that. And in Darfur as well, which I think, in Darfur, I think that it's amazing that Jewish organizations have led the charge for Darfur. But I think specifically in South Africa, I think that we have an extra responsibility, because we here in Canada, when I look at people who are South African with their, we love to show off our South African heritage, and we have South African art in the house, and we always
cry my beloved country.
Yeah, exactly. But we love to talk about it. But at the same time, we take all the good out of Africa, but we don't always give back the good that we can give back there.
So do you have debates with South African Jews?
Sometimes, yeah. When I was in England, I met I forget his name, but he works for an organization that is a Jewish organization that specifically does aid work for orphans and shanty towns in South Africa. And I had this exact discussion with him, and I was really proud of what he was doing as a Jewish South African. And I thought, that is wonderful, but I don't always see it enough here. And I don't want to criticize people here. I think people here are obviously very generous and they give a lot to others.
No, I think you should be critical.
I think that, yeah. Well, I think that sometimes in Toronto.
I really do. I think we have a lot to do.
Yeah. Well, I think that from doing the Darfur work at York and doing this work as well, I think sometimes some people, in the Jewish community like to just say they just like to give to Jewish organizations and things like that.
Look, I've sort of been embroiled in some activism lately having to do with our current government and its position on refugees.
Sure.
And whenever I step up, and this is in no way patting myself on the back because I have a lot more I could do, I start to realize the void, exactly like you're saying. And I don't want to wear, sort of white gloves on this issue. There are an awful lot of people who have beautiful lives who don't really lift a finger to help other people. Let's not kid ourselves in our Jewish community.
Yeah.
And that's wrong.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
Well, I'm not saying that's not where I'm coming from. I'm just coming from, I think that there are so many things that we do to help the Jewish community, but I think that is innately, as Jews, we have a responsibility to not only help Jews.
I understand. We're going to come back to this in a second, okay? We'll debate this. Please stay with us, and we'd like you to learn more about Via Hafta by going to our website at www.viahafta.org. That's VEAHAVTA, and we are talking to Adam Hummel, who is our guest today, and he is taking you into the world of empathy with his brand new book, and of course, lots of information about his activism. We'll be back in a moment. So Adam, before the break, we were talking about our personal and collective communal responsibility to the world in which we live. And you were stating that you believe that South African Jews who left South Africa perhaps have a greater responsibility to Africa than others. Just talk to that for a moment. How so?
Sure. Well, like I said before, I think that we are lucky that we left. And I think that if we are going to pride ourselves on our Africanness,
yes,
then we also have to we can't just take the good that is Africa, which is the decorations and the musical culture and all these great things. But that's also the other side of Africa, the darker side of Africa, the poor side of Africa. I think that if we have to embrace one, then we should be embracing the other as well.
So when you're sitting at your Shabbat table, or your Passover table, most recently the high holidays, and your bubby is there, and your Zaidi is there, and your family, your cousins, and you go to shul and you meet lots of South Africans. What's their take on this stuff? Do they say, yo, way to go? How do you say that? I can't speak. I'm not my South African.
No,
way to go. We're proud of you. Thank you for representing us. Or do they sort of cower back and say, whoa, you know, maybe I should have been doing this? Or why are you wasting your time?
No, they're very proud of it, and they're my family is very supportive of it, and everyone who I speak to about it is.
Yes.
I do talk about my South African heritage a lot in it because I do feel a certain, as I said before, a certain amount of responsibility towards it. And even though I was born during apartheid South Africa, but we left and I was very young and I haven't much conscious, life during that. But I'm conscious of what my family went through.
Yes. And
I do debate this a lot with my family. In fact, we were speaking about it the other night after Kol Nidre about the way that Jews acted during apartheid South Africa and the role that they had in South Africa. And it is something that we talk about a lot. And I think that maybe subconsciously in my mind, that is something that is fueling this towards me. It's not subconscious. I am consciously saying that it is something that is fueling it a bit. And
what did your parents go through, or your family?
No, I don't think they didn't go through anything specific, but it was the shared experience of white people in South Africa, Jewish people in South Africa. It was you are living in a segregated community, and you are, even as a young child, I know my parents, everyone had people working for them, and it was just around them and everything, and they were part of the system. And when you're a kid there, you don't really want to say anything and step over the lines. And when you're an adult as well, it's South Africa was a scary place. It was a police state, and so there's certain things that you do just to.
Right. So I'm just trying to determine. It sounds like what your parents went through is that they had to leave, or they felt that it would be better for them to leave. Is that correct?
I think
because they didn't live badly.
No, I've spoken about this with my parents a lot, and the reason why we left was because there was a fear among many people there that the crime was going to start getting worse,
yes,
especially with a lot of immigration into South Africa, and that was mainly the reason. It was crime, which has proved to be true. The crime there is very bad now.
Right. I've often asked people what it's like to leave their mother country, if you will.
Sure.
And it takes about 7 to 8 years to integrate into a new country. So as an example, when your parents came here, if they sort of followed that road, before you get a family doctor, before you have a community, before you have a shul to go to, a rabbi that you can rely on, so on, it can take 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
It's not easy to leave at all. But I'm really deeply impressed by I guess what's in your genes, what's in your DNA, and like I said before, what your mom fed you growing up, because you're an activist. I mean, you're a full-blown Jewish activist, and those are far and few between here in Toronto. So well done to you.
Thank you.
Well done to you. And I guess the question is did your mother and father speak to you when you were younger about the importance of helping others? Did they show you what that should look like?
My parents are very generous. They're very much part of the community, and they are. I mean, they're very good people, and they are very much like that. So I know that where I come up like that, and we're also very Jewish. I talk about this in my book a lot, about Tikkun Olam and about where it comes from and about my Jewishness. And my Jewish education, and they absolutely showed it. Everything. I went to Associated and I went to Chat, and throughout everything, every charity drive and every bit of the way they were there, showing me what to do. They're not activists, but they certainly did put in us those characteristics and those values that are definitely coming out.
Well, what about you? What about other people's suffering compels you to respond?
That's a good question. I don't know. I sort of had when I started university, I was very quiet when I went to high school.
Yes.
Through my whole life. And when I went to university, I got more involved. I got really involved with Hillel. And And through that, I sort of found that like a voice, and I found a way that I could get involved. And I saw a lot of the stuff that that is going on in the community. I found that in the Jewish community in Toronto, in the day school system, I was more sheltered towards just the Jewish issues. At York, I saw a little bit more of what was going on, and I actually did a couple of times, end of high school, beginning of undergrad, came out on the ALLTalkTV van a few times to help, and that was really eye-opening for me. Like, I was living in Thornhill, so I didn't come downtown very often, and it was an amazing thing to see, and I realized how little you have to do to change someone's life, and how that little for me changed my perspective so much.
Very good. We're talking to Adam Hummel, and Adam will be honored at our Starry Nights Gala on November the 4th here in Toronto. If you'd like to come, give us a call at 416-964-7698. I've thought long and hard about the distinction between individuals who see an injustice occurring and respond to it, and then people who see that same injustice and don't respond to it. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot written about it. There's a lot of things that have been discussed over the years. How is it that righteous Gentiles existed in Eastern Europe, and at the risk of their entire family being killed, they would help a Jew, and then there are other people who saw the same thing happening and they wouldn't. So I want to get your take on that when we come back. Okay. So please stay with us as Adam Hummel takes us into the world of empathy on ALLTalkTV. Welcome back to ALLTalkTV with Adam Hummel. I'm enjoying this conversation very much, really. Yeah, I really am. Because, you know, we were talking during the break. I think that Toronto in many ways is a real sleepy city. And when I say that, obviously I refer to the Jewish community. And God forbid, I'm not suggesting that there aren't people who are involved in activism or tikkun olam and so on. But because I feel so blessed in this city. I mean, it's certainly one of the wealthiest cities or cities in the world and countries in the world. And I think with that comes responsibility, and that responsibility is to help others. And I see a lot of people just simply don't do much at all. They will give charity and thank God for tzedakah, and ALLTalkTV relies on tzedakah. But it's really, really hard to move some people and say to them, listen, you are immigrants, you are refugees. Those are the people who need your help today, right? And you understand that experience, so you need to move in this. Now, you talked a little bit about this concept in your book, right?
Yeah, I talk a lot about it in the book. Well, again, I talk about tikkun olam a lot because that's where I come from.
Yeah.
But again, also this concept, I think that people who are more fortunate have more of a responsibility to do more, and I think that I actually feel very proud to be part of the Toronto community, because I think that, you know, we are wonderful, and I think we do give a lot, and we are generous, and we are able to do so. But I think that there's obviously a lot more that we can do, and it does sometimes. At York, I remember when I was involved with Hillel, it bothered me that sometimes when people would not want to give to a charity that we would have been hyping up because it didn't specifically contribute its services towards Jews, because it might help other people. Yeah. That drives me a little crazy.
What drives you crazy about it?
It drives me crazy that I think that, like I said earlier, I think that as Jews, I think we have our responsibility to help everyone, and it doesn't have to be just Jews. I think certainly they're high up there, other Jews, but I also think that, you know, thank God we do have a very affluent community here, and we do take care of Jews a lot.
Right.
And although there's always more that can be done, I really think that there's always another side to it, and I think that it also helps our image, and it helps what other people think about us when we help others, and we do. But I think there can always be more. No, and I also don't want to pump up what I do any more than I should. But I think, you know, I can see how you know, I've been doing this while I've been in school. This isn't a full-time job, and it just takes a little bit of extra effort, and you are able to make a.
Yeah, I like the way you say you're hooked. You're hooked on activism. I'm really happy that we're honoring you, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, really. I mean, I made that phone call to you, letting you know that we'll be honoring you. I think you were in Kenya at the time, right?
I think it was, yeah.
But I'm so happy that you accepted it. I really am.
Oh, thank you very much.
No, absolutely. How come some people will be walking along the road and they'll see a woman lying by the side of there, either asleep or maybe not in such good shape, and they'll walk by and somebody else will stop? What's the difference between those two people?
I don't know. I don't know. I know there is social. I know that some people have a more inbuilt sense of social empathy than others. I always remember in grade 10 learning about the bystander effect and why it happens.
Yes.
But I don't know. But I do know that people who don't, either if it's someone lying on the street or like that, or it's something happening overseas that can be stopped. I really think that The West Wing was my favorite TV show.
It was a great show.
And I remember there was one episode when CJ, who's one of the best characters on the show, she says they're talking about a genocide that's going on, and she says that stand by while atrocities are taking place, and you might as well be culpable as well. And I really think, and that speaks to a lot of what activists do. We try to help out, even if it's far away. And I think that there's no sense to be made about why someone would stop or they wouldn't. But maybe it has to do with their values. Maybe it has to do with the situation. But I know there are for sure times for me when that has happened, where I've walked past people and I haven't stopped and I've just kept going.
It's not black and white. There's no black and white. And of course, a lot of people watching this will say, "Oh, come on, Avram, you know everybody. You know how people respond to these things." And of course, I don't.
Yeah.
Right. But when you run an organization, when you're part of a community, you can see sort of the level of response when a Rwanda happens, or something in the Balkan happens, or today in the Congo, or Sudan, Darfur, and so on. So really, it's having your finger on the pulse and getting a sense of where we're at or where we're not at. And I just think we can do a lot more.
Yeah.
And that's not just the Jewish community.
Yeah, it's everyone.
It's not. It's absolutely everyone. I'm really, really fascinated by your work in Kenya specifically. So you were telling us before you landed in Kenya, you were the only volunteer, and then they took you to this village, right? Well, I'm just curious, how did you feel when you realized, holy moly, this is just me here, you know?
Yeah, well, I spent a very sleepless night thinking about what I should do, whether or not I should leave. The first night I was in Nairobi.
Yeah.
Whether or not I should leave or just go with it. And I decided to stick with it because the people who I was staying with and they were taking care of me were great, and they assured me that I'd have a memorable time.
Yes.
And so I jumped into it. We took a very bumpy 6-hour bus ride through the Kenyan countryside to this village. And when I arrived there, I met a lot of youths who were really excited that I had been there, and I instantly felt like I'd made the right decision. And it's 3 weeks. I'm going to stick it out, despite the no water, no electricity, no nothing.
What was it like?
It was interesting. Like, I'd never been in anything so primitive before for such a long time.
Yeah.
Pit latrine and a shower out of a little bucket with purified water from the river. And just outside where I was staying, they had every morning there was like a pit that was like the village butchery where they would kill a cow every morning. And that's how I was like awoken on the first day. So it was like a
Did you see them killing a cow?
Yeah. After a couple of days.
How did you feel for the cow?
Well, I felt bad, but after a couple of days
That's what you eat.
It's the circle of life.
Yes.
It's what you eat, and I just jumped in and I helped.
Yes.
One day. I couldn't do so much, but I helped a little bit.
Right. Did they laugh at you?
Absolutely.
Did they? What were they laughing at?
At the look and color of my face when I first saw it.
So did you look like this when you first came? Because you look very... See, I'm disheveled. You're not.
Shaved in a couple of days.
Yeah.
No, for sure I did. I think I came from a trip in Israel, so I looked healthy and tanned and nice.
Yes.
And it was good. I let my beard grow out a little bit while I was there, though, and I just embraced it all. But it was a cool experience.
We're talking to Adam Hummel. Adam will be honored at Via Hafta's Starry Nights Gala on November the 4th here in Toronto. If you'd like to know more about it, please call 416-964-7698. He's written this book, and I'm very, very envious, not jealous, but envious, because I'm trying to write a book, and I don't have 70,000 words worth of something, but you clearly do.
Yeah.
So when we come back, we're going to continue this discussion. Stay with us. Adam Hummel taking us into the world of empathy on Via Hafta TV.
Animated by one supreme being, which is the God.
We don't do this in a sense of feminism, rather this is...
The interesting thing is that the political will seems to have come.
You can find it only in Jews and Palestinians.
A very good job at keeping it under control.
That liberating people who are thought to be unjust because of social, economic, or political conditions.
That time I thought it was so scary.
Officials, everything you do.
When you know it, so you...
Proxies of the Vision 27 meeting together.
As if you can't wrong things and you slow.
Hello and welcome to Mensch Life. I'm David Grossman.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome back to Via Hafta Television. You'll notice that my telephone went off during our discussion before, but it only does that when someone's telling the truth and something, the truth about something very magical. So let's continue in that light. You went to Kenya and you found there was a need to really introduce tools of peace or tools for peace to a particular area in Kenya. It's called the Rift Valley, right? Mm-hmm. And I think there were 4 or 5 different components to what you offered, to what you introduced to this area. What were those different components?
All right, well, the first part of the project was a soccer tournament.
Yes.
Soccer is an international language, and when I was there the first time, we did a soccer tournament with a few youths, and it went really well. And so when I was leaving, I decided to come back to Toronto and then send some money for them to hold a proper tournament, for a day-long tournament to play with each other and get a few teams involved.
How much did you send?
$300.
Was that your money?
Yeah, the first time it was.
Yeah.
And then it went really well. So what we decided was that the second time we would do it, we decided it would be annual. And I decided that I was going to now go back to Kenya in May 2009, and we were going to hold another tournament. And this time it was going to be held with 3 different tribal communities, each participating. And that while we were doing the tournament, we might as well take advantage of people being there. So we decided to hold a peace seminar as well. And so the first weekend we kicked off the tournament in 3 different in these 3 different communities. And then that week, I had a peace seminar with 25 youths from 3 different tribes,
okay.
Divided between guys and girls.
Where was the information drawn from?
Well, the one book I used a lot was, it's called Peace First. It's a book by Uri Savir, who's one of Israel's lead negotiators. And it's amazing, and it draws blueprints for what an ideal peace settlement would look like. And so we used a lot of concepts from his book. And then just stuff I knew from political science. I always had a focus on peace in my studies.
You have a double BA?
Yeah, I did history and political science.
Yes.
So
were these people crazy? Were these people crazy about you?
They liked me, and I was crazy about them too.
What language did you speak?
English.
You spoke English.
Yeah, everyone there speaks English.
Yeah, but did you learn the local dialect?
Swahili, a little bit. I did. Yeah.
How did they show their affection towards you? How did that play out?
Okay, well, the first thing they did was when I arrived, that first tournament where I just sent the money, I got the photos back that they sent, and they named the soccer tournament the Adam Hummel Coexistence Soccer Tournament.
Yes, that's fantastic.
So that was very touching, and I was very much please change the name immediately because I don't like this.
Yeah.
But they told me that the only other person they would name it after was the president, who they were not fond of, and so. So that was also very touching, and so things like that.
Was there any awareness or consciousness of your Jewishness?
Yeah, there was.
How so?
Right away, when I first arrived there, anytime I travel, I'm obviously a little bit hesitant to say right away until I know the situation that I'm Jewish. someone who one of the organizers who I was with, I was speaking to him, and he was very Christian. And I was speaking to him, and I told him that I was Jewish, and he told me immediately, you have to tell everyone here that you're Jewish, because they've never met a Jew before, and they'd love to ask you questions and hear about it.
What kind of questions do they ask you?
They asked me amazing questions.
Like what?
They asked me, well, I spent one night with them. We went camping one night, and they sort of had a Q&A session over the campfire with me, and they asked me everything about, the only obvious question was the why don't we believe in the divinity of Jesus question.
Yeah.
But then they asked me things like, well, this one group, they just asked me things about, they were just asking me general questions about being kosher and just a few beliefs. But I met another group who was actually, I guess they would be considered like Messianic Jews, and they had ties with like some rabbi, I think, in Miami. And they knew quite a lot, and they wanted me to just help fill in some of the gaps.
Yes.
And so I went to go speak to them one morning, and they asked me things like, why do you take 3 steps back and 3 steps forward when you start the Amida, which I was blown away. They asked me what the Parsha was that week.
Wow.
They asked me why women are supposed to dress more modestly, and they asked me, one of the guys stood up and he said, you know, while I was reading about Judaism, I kept coming across this poem, which I'd like you to tell me what it means. And he recited in English, off the top of his head, what I realized after he said it was Hatikva.
Very good.
And he said it, and it was really, really touching about how much they knew and how thoughtful their questions were.
Were you amazed at how much you knew or did not know?
I was amazed at how much I knew, yeah. I was able to answer most of their questions, which is pretty cool. I guess the money for chat really went a long way.
I was going to say, you should tell your parents.
I know, my parents are very proud that I could
happy
do that.
to hear that.
Anything else, yeah.
So you had the Peace Conference, you had the soccer tournament, you had a drum group, right?
A drama group.
I'm sorry, a drama group,
Some of the youths, they started a drama group where they do peaceful skits. They do skits and poetry and songs about peace. They do it in like marketplaces and schools. We also started with these youths. We went to a few different high schools, and we started peace clubs in the high schools, so we could talk about peace and like do activities at a younger age.
What was I was going to say the dogma, but what were the principles of these peace groups? And I ask you this in context, the context being that you know that there are many groups right now working around the world. Romeo Dallaire is involved with one of them, helping people find tools for peace in Rwanda, as an example. So it's so funny, you started this very ad hoc, right?
Yeah.
So what were your principles?
Okay, well, first, I can't not plug this, but at the end of our seminar, the youth drafted our very own first youth peace treaty.
Yes.
It's called the Youth Treaty of Hope, Reconciliation, and Peace, and it's an appendix in the book.
Very good.
And it's really amazing, and it really lies out everything that they do believe in. They believe in, one thing that came up a lot was intermarriage between the tribes. They believe that...
They believe or they don't?
They do believe. They want intermarriage between the tribes,
okay.
For greater understanding. They want to make sure that tribalism is simply a thing of the past. Tribalism as in this sort of this hatred against another tribe for no particular reason. They want it to be a thing of the past and a thing that only their elders subscribe to. They wanted to have people be able to go on each other's territory without being nervous. They wanted to be able to speak about civic issues openly without being worried about who supports which politician and things like that. And so we went through this concise peace treaty and we laid out all the points.
You know what I'm taking out of this? We have to go to a break. I'm sorry to interrupt, but what I'm taking out of this is we're not, people just aren't that different anywhere in the world.
No, they're not.
They're really not.
No.
No, because if you and I sat down with a bunch of our buddies and decided, okay, here's going to be principles for peace here in Toronto, because there are areas of the city that don't get along. They wouldn't be that much different. We wouldn't use the word tribalism, but we may use neighborhood or ethnicity, right?
Yeah.
We're not that much different.
No.
Please stay with us because we are in the middle, or right near the end actually, of a fascinating interview with Adam Hummel, who wrote this book at the mere age of 26 years old. You can buy it for $26.
$25.
That makes up your age and the price. $25 on Amazon.com. Buy it because the money goes towards this program. We'll be back in a moment. We're with Adam Hummel, who's taking us into the world of empathy on ALLTalkTV. So ALLTalkTV's been around since 1996, and we work with the homeless here in Toronto. We work internationally as well. and we've responded to crisis many times, particularly with the Israelis who are superlative. It's an honor, really. It's a nachas, like they say, to work with the Israelis around the world. We are honoring some agents of Tikkun Olam on November the 4th at our Starry Nights Gala, including Adam Hummel, who is sitting here with me. We're in our last segment of this interview, and I'm enjoying it very much. I'm really, really proud of you, if I can say that. And I think you're doing marvelous work. You went to Kenya. You wrote a book about it. You graduated law school, and now you're articling.
I finished articling.
You finished articling. And while in Kenya, you started up a peace process which had 5 different components or segments. We talked about 4 of them: the peace conference itself, a soccer tournament, the drama group, high school peace groups, and I guess the final one is the chicken farm. So what happens on the chicken farm?
That was my favorite project. This was totally the idea of the youths in Kenya. I received back one day a budget for everything that they'd spent money on that I'd recently sent to them. And at the bottom was poultry project. And what they told me is that they'd started a project where they buy chickens and they donate the eggs from the chickens to people in the communities that we're working with who had recently been diagnosed with HIV or AIDS, which is a lot of people. And it's also a group that is really marginalized and shunned in society. People still don't really understand HIV and AIDS there. People are ignorant about it in some ways. And so the purpose of this project was, one, to actually give these people some nutrients from this food, like from eggs. And but the other one was for the youths to show these mainly elderly people that they have the support of the youth. That there is a little bit of a helping hand over there. And in the last few years, what we've done is we've expanded the farm. We now have about 140 chickens, thanks to fundraisers that were done at Chat. And we tell people they can buy a chicken. It costs $5, and they can name the chicken whatever they want. So there's a lot of chickens named after Chat teachers.
Do you really?
And, yeah. And,
like there goes Rabbi Goldman?
Yeah, exactly. And but now what we've also done is, thanks to a donor from Israel, we have 3 goats. And from some people here, we have 2 cows.
Do you have a nonprofit charitable status?
Not yet.
Okay. Did anybody hate you? Did anybody dislike you in Kenya?
In Kenya, no. Well, there might be, but I haven't run up against anyone.
There were no clashes? Who's this white guy?
The only problem is, which I realized when I was there in July, is that it's very difficult to ask people to get assistance from a lot of people there, because I have one person, Kefa, who's in a lot of the pictures, and he is the person on the ground who is running all the projects and really doing an amazing job. And I pay him a salary just out of my pocket, but it's very difficult to ask people with nothing to volunteer their time for something where they're not going to get much out of it, except for goodness in their hearts. And that is difficult, because a lot of the times where we offer projects, some of them will come around they would like something out of it, which I would love to do, but it's difficult.
Yes.
And so that is the one sort of big obstacle we do come up against, is finding more and more people to get involved. Because there are youths who are involved, and there are youths who come to the seminars and who go out and distribute eggs and do these road shows. But there's a lot of people as well who we have a difficult time engaging, because... I
imagine so.
Yeah.
Volunteers are hard to come by. I'm looking at this picture. Is there any one kid there that you can tell us about? Any particular story?
In that group, no, because we actually were just walking through that school, and I was bombarded with some kids.
Any child or
these
parent
women
or
here,
adult?
yeah. Well, when we were giving out eggs here, this is a group of 49 widows who are HIV positive.
I see.
They have a support group where they meet every Wednesday. So we went to meet them on one of the days they were meeting. They make baskets, and they have their own goat, actually, where they take turns taking the milk from the goat to help. We went there just to give them some eggs.
What's the goat's name?
I don't remember.
David Rottenberg or something?
Something like that. All the projects that I do have there are named after my friends who've donated.
Do you ever get overwhelmed with sadness because of your work, because of what you see? These are widows, these are orphans.
Yeah, I don't get overwhelmed with sadness, but I become really overwhelmed with those widows, and with another, we started working with a school that's primarily an orphanage.
Yes.
I get overwhelmed with sadness a little bit, but with joy at how little it actually takes to change their everything.
Dave, thank you, Adam,
for
being with us. It was a pleasure to have you, and like I said before, I'm deeply looking forward to honoring you on November the 4th, and it's a big deal. There's going to be a lot of people there watching you, so blow them away with what you've done.
I will, thank
you. Really, because it's very special. This is the book that he's written. It's available on Amazon.com for 25 bucks, right? So really good job. You've done some really great stuff. And we look forward to actually working together with you at Via Hafta.
Thank you very much.
Yes. If you would like to know more about Via Hafta, please go to our website, and that's viahafta.org. That's VEAHAVTA. We hope you had a beautiful holiday season, and we look forward to being with you again next week. Thank you to Adam Hummel for taking us into the world of empathy on Via Hafta Television. Thank you again.